Okay, everybody, let's get started. Welcome to Thursday Garden Chat, the weekly public service broadcast of Garden Masterclass. Now, we are well into our summer workshop season in England, and just a little reminder about what's coming up in the next few weeks. Well, in June, really. Caroline Jackson, who did our wonderful Bad Botany course earlier this year, will be doing an event called Cut for More, Summer Pruning in Practice at Maurice Foster's Arboretum in Kent. That's on June the 6th. On June the 10th, we've got an event which is proving quite popular, selling out quite quickly. So if you want to get a ticket, come and join us soon. James Hitchmore will be at Knepp, the Knepp Walls Garden in Sussex, with head gardener Chris Harper, looking at their really very special low fertility substrate planting there, seeing how that's coming along. And then later on in June, we've got 2 workshops with Nigel Dunnett. It's his Flow Ecological Design Process workshop. So for anyone who's done the naturalistic planting design course with myself and Nigel, and if you happen to be around in the north of England, then that will be, I think, perhaps a really useful event to attend. So that's at the Hepworth Wakefield. Other than that, these events we record for our YouTube channel, where most people see them. They stay on there for a little while, well, for a few months at least, and eventually are archived, where they will be accessible to members only. So membership of Garden Masterclass entitles you to access to this enormous archive, well over 200 hours now of inspirational garden presentations and interviews and discussions. It also gives you reductions, particularly on webinars and on webinar recordings, because our webinars are run through the winter season. And we've got around about 100 hours of information-packed webinars from global experts available on the website. And there'll be various other occasional discounts and goodies available to members as well. Or if you are new to us, then you can just sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can do that by going to the homepage of the website and signing up for that newsletter to keep in touch. So now this evening, we're going to Italy. Annie, who is actually in Sardinia at the moment, unfortunately can't join us because it was a contact of Annie's who's with us this evening. António Perazzi is a landscape architect based in Milan, but he has an experimental garden in Tuscany. He's a passionate plantsman, which is perhaps unusual for a landscape architect. So we hope to be hearing more about that. But first of all, Antonio, how did you get into this field?
Well, I was, that kind of child with a passion. And I come from a family of all female because my father escaped from the family when I was 2 years old because he was probably scared about all these sisters that were all journalists. And he was as well a journalist. But, the sisters were all better journalists, better writers, and better all. And so he said, okay, bye-bye, I go. Anyway, I was very happy not to have a father because I always thought, can you imagine having even a father fighting with me if I have all this mother and sisters and our owns always telling me what to do? But anyway, on the contrary, these Florentine women were very great because they helped me to cultivate this passion through the years. And especially my aunt, who was a war correspondent, she has been following all the Vietnam War, and she has interviewed all the political leaders all over the world through the years. So she was quite tough as a.
What's her name?
She was Oriana Falacci.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She was your aunt?
yeah,
she's amazing. Oh my God! Wow.
And of course she was as well even a great gardener in a way.
Really, I never knew that.
No,
Oh,
but especially she was an horrible gardener. She never knew nothing about,
yes,
but she was very much in love of nature, especially of wilderness. And that's why the family, the Falacci family, bought this property in Tuscany, because Florence was somehow a sort of a retreat in the nature, because the Chianti Hills are really wild and keep on being very wild at the moment. We have not this wilderness, not only in terms of plants, but even in terms of animals. We have now a lot of wolves, for example. We still don't have bears, but we have a lot of deers and any other kind of animal. And this makes very problematic of doing a garden, because especially the big porcupine is it's a fin gourmet. Is very well trained to find the most exotic plants in the garden and eating at the right season the best ones. A week ago, he ate some aspidistra that I have collected in China, and beautiful. And it was the first year that they were growing properly. And of course, he bite all the buds at the while they were growing, so probably is going to die. Anyway, in this family, the big problem was to find myself, and I find my own room in the garden. So I escaped from these typewriter sounds in the house, because I was not allowed to speak, to say nothing, and probably not answering the phone, not even reading, because probably the sound of the pages were too much, and there were always someone asking me, "What are you reading? Are you sure you need to write this bullshit, or is it correct to read these and that, and why are you noting these and that?" But on the other hand, my aunt Oriana was very generous with me, so she left me this property when she died, and I was very happy to start doing my garden. And for many years, it have been a family retreat, a sort of a holiday retreat and a weekend retreat. So the classical manage was to stay 5 days in Milano and then take this long journey for Piuca, which is the name of the property, which is in the midway in between Florence and Siena, and arrive there late at night and probably meet the porcupine or the boars and other friends in the garden, and then work the weekend, and when the garden was prepared, leave everything and go back to Milan. So this has been the managed for many years. Now in the last 3 years we are living there, so my younger kids decided not to come back to Milan. And it was very funny because during the COVID, the elder one, who's now is 14 years old, and his name is Olmo, which is elm, and it's an ancient Italian name. And he said, and he's a very good gardener as well, and especially in propagating roses. And he told me, we have decided that maybe we can go to the school here without going back to Milan. And so me and my wife, who's my associate as well, said, well, let's try. It's not easy, but let's try. So now my life has changed. I am alone in Milano when I am in Milano, and my wife ran another office there, another practice there in our country house with a collaborator there. And I keep on running my office in Milano, where we are almost 6 here in Milano and 2 in Tuscany. And then I have another assistant in Sicily, because I have many projects in Sicily. And so I have this pleasure of working a lot there, especially because I am the artistic director of a garden festival in Radicepura. Later, I will tell you more about that. Yes. And so if Dalila can share the video, I have prepared some slides. And no, I don't know. Is it correct? Should I start with that?
Yes. We're. I can. Yeah, we've got the shared screen. So yes.
Okay. So Dalila, can you share?
Yeah, we've got the first slide up.
Yeah, I can see.
Presentation?
I can see the video now. I don't know why. Let me see if I see. Riunione. Dalia, come faccio a vedere il video intero? Non sento.
Prova a guardare in alto.
Visualizza, riunione, cos'è?
Esatto.
Visualizza?
Prova a vedere se puoi cambiare l'impostazione.
Sorry, Noah, I'm just because otherwise I just see us, I don't see the video.
I can see it. Claire, can you see it?
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, proprio sullo schermo.
Sullo schermo?
Sì, dovrebbe esserci.
No, non vedo niente. Let me see. Okay, now, yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Dalila. Okay, so my mother, actually, she was a very good trainer. She was writing about feminism, and as I told you, I was without my father, so I grew up in well trained in doing any kind of what we call in Italy lavoro femminile. So I know how to cook, I know how to stitch my pants, and I know how to clean the house, and we share all the activities of the managing of the family, me and my wife and everything, and I found it very normal.
Yeah, great. Good for you. Yes.
I'm all for that.
No, I'm happy. I'm really happy about that. And so with my mother, I have started growing plants, many different kinds of plants, and especially traveling for discovering new plants. And for many years, we had this house in Piedmont in Valsesia, which is a very interesting spot for wild flowers, wild alpine flowers, because it's a very rainy valley and with high cliffs, and so with a wide range of different plants. And then in Tuscany, I instead find something very opposite, because in Tuscany, Dalila, se vai avanti, we had this property which was really something special where I meet the wildlife, any kind of wildlife. And I start receiving this house from my aunt, which was inhabited by the family, because in the 60s, they bought this farm property with many houses and lands. And but of course, writers do not know how to manage the country. So the Chianti was abandoned. The olive groves were almost left aside, even because in the 85 we have a very, very strong winter that has killed all the aerial part of the olives. And so after the 85, all the trees stopped their production for 10 to 15 years, because they restart growing from the feet. And so the landscape and everything has changed very much. But writers are very tough. They know how to keep on growing thoughts and ideas, and so they were happy when I start saying I want to do my garden with no limits, with no prejudice for the wild plants and the cultivated plants. So I start investigating what was the relationship between the idea of garden and the idea of beauty in the wild. And this is something that has really been characterizing my activity through the years. And in fact, next month will come out my last book, and it is about the wilderness and the wilderness for gardeners, and the idea of wilderness for gardeners. The first thing I was start doing is to manage the garden by myself, because I had this sort of list of 10 rules, And one of those rules was to be the gardener or the gardener, so with any others working there. And so can you imagine cutting the lawns with these spiky lawns, Mediterranean lawns that are very problematic because they keep on growing till June, and then they keep on being goldy, and then an elogio of the dryness for all the summer to September. But then I've discovered that if I invert the idea of cutting and leaving some spots, so for example, start leaving some parts of the lawn by itself, it would be much more interesting for me and much more aesthetical and much more ecological as well. So by now, my work is to keep on doing this variation on the theme of the prairie every year, because every spring and every summer is very different there. For example, during the COVID, we had a very mild spring with mild rains, and the rain were even in July and partially in August. So the garden was perfect and the flowers were very happy. The year after was a catastrophic dry summer, and now it is something even worse, because we have been under the rain for more than a month, and heavy rains. So big trees are falling, the road is being destroyed by the water, and all the beauty of the prairie is compromised by all this water, because for example, Vicha or other plants that usually are at their best are growing too much, and they are covering all the other flowers. For example, the wild bulbs or the digitalis, for example, like in this photo, are completely covered by other kind of plants. And even campanula, for example, this year won't be at their best. Then the other thing was to do a garden with any irrigation system and growing my flowers. So most of the flowers, most of the plants I have there are grown from seed and or reproduced by cuttings collected somewhere. And this means that the plants that I grow there are very well adapted to the climate and to the soil, much better than buying plants and putting there. For example, I have a small collection of Mediterranean oaks, and they are growing very fast, and I'm completely happy about the way they are adapted to that land. For example, I have evergreen oaks that because of the altitude, because of the climate, are turning to deciduous tree plants, but they can grow very well. Most of all the Tabruensis, the Macrolepis, which should be mostly evergreen, and there is a deciduous tree. And then I have many different kinds of spots. So I have the chance of growing dry climate Mediterranean plants, like the euphorbias, the cistus, and the phlomis, and many other plants. Many of them are collected from where I work. For example, I have been working in Albania in the last 3 years, and I have collected some phlomis I've never seen before, or stachys, or even sideritis, or other plants like that, like euphorbias, amygdaloides, but different from the Italians or the other one I have seen. Even some salvias, like the pomifera or some others, that have different scents, different colors, and instead, for example, doing a garden in the Tuscan country seaside, in Roccamare, in Castiglione della Pescaia, have collected many rosemaries with beautiful colors. I've never seen them in the nurseries, but they grow in the wild. That's the interesting aspect. And then I have many plants collected from the trips, because me and my wife are plant enthusiasts and garden enthusiasts. So when we travel, we mostly bring back seeds. So again, if we can, cuttings. And so we have plants that mostly come from China, from the Yunnan and Sichuan area, where we have traveled for 6 years periodically, because we have a friendship with the director of the botanical garden in Kunming, and so we were able to make some trips with them. And then I have taught 1 year in the Kunming University, and so it was quite a pleasure to be back and being able to bring back some plants. For example, I have a variety of Peonia lutea, and Peonia della Valle, sorry, which is very different from the others because the flowers are very small, but it is growing very fast. And even the Davidia, it's well adapted to the Mediterranean climate, and it's growing, and some other from Yunnan. And then we have some Japanese plants as well, some Prunus mume, which is, it's a difficult plant to grow because it's suffering very much for the late colds, especially the Easter cold, the Easter frost. So just after the blooming, if they receive the strong cold, it's a big problem because the wood is broken, and so all the diseases come through the wood, and the plant doesn't grow very aesthetically well. And so this is quite frustrating, but it's so beauty that one of our daughters' second name is Mume, actually. And then this is how changed. It is really changing very, very much. And we have not this year, not this winter, but we have snow at least a couple of times. And then we have very dry summer. Last summer, we didn't have at least one drop of water for more than 2.5 months, almost 3 months. And so some plants were very, very suffering. Some just dropped the leaves, some other died. But I'm not cruel, but I'm happy sometimes when some spaces is again available in the garden, so I can try different species and different plants. And all this experience with the garden was very useful for me for doing my projects, because I usually use plants that I have already grown in my garden in the projects I do. And now we are very happy, Dalia può andare avanti, because we have many different kinds of projects, not only in terms of scale, but even in terms of commitments and skills. For example, we are now doing the design for this floating garden in San Giacomo in Paludo, which is in between. It is in Venice, actually, in the Venetian Laguna. It's in between Burano and Murano, and it's a fantastic 2-hectare property, square in the middle of the sea. And the garden is it's the glue of all the spaces, the external spaces, which are absolutely lived, because you cannot get inside the island without passing through the garden. You cannot go from the museum to the house or to the ticket office to the other residency for the artists and etc. without passing in the garden. And it is under construction, but I'm very happy because we have started doing some plantations. And doing a garden in Venice, especially if an isle, is very, very difficult, because can you imagine carrying not only the plants but even the soil, because after 1 meter of depth, the water is salty. So it's very important to do a correct plantation and prepare the drainage of every tree, and so it's a very different way of planting. And then there is strong winds in the winter, and salt winds, and so it's not easy at all. But during this period of building site, I have started planting some trees, even for experimenting what is their behavior there. So it's not just a question of resistance to the cold or to the heat, but it's a resistance for the salt conditions of the Venetian Laguna. And the other important thing is that is a garden separated from all the rest, which is very, very interesting for me, being a designer. On the other hand, we are just ending this 7 years project in Florence, in Manifattura Tabacchi, which was place where the Italian Manifattura were producing the cigars, the Sigaro Toscano, and even the cigarettes. That was an Italian property, so it was not it was almost like a bank. It was closed. So imagine a big area inside Florence, but like a fort, so separated from all the rest, because the tobacco was entering inside the property with a train, and the workers were inspected at the exit not to steal any cigarettes or tobacco. And after the tobacco, fortunately, success was over, the area was abandoned for more than 20 years. And in these 20 years, the nature made a beautiful garden, a sort of secret garden inside Florence. And I was very much inspired by this nature. And I was inspired by the two teams of architects that made the master plan, because they put together, the commitments put together two very different equipe. One was Studio Sana, Kazuyo Sejima, the Japanese architect, and the other was Studio Mumbai, the Indian architects. And one and the other, a side and the other, have done a very strategic project for the artistic attitude of Florence, and let's say this sense of creativity that is innate for Italians. And so I have mostly worked on the surfaces, trying to promote the waterproof surfaces everywhere, even on the roofs. And I have designed this hanging garden in the middle of the complex, which is called Officina Botanica, because it was the machinery officina, so the place where they were working the machinery for the tobacco. And it was the Fort Knox in the middle of the Manifattura. And so now the idea is to create a public garden on a private spot, open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, where you can discover the beauty of the Florentine tradition of gardening and curiosity on plants, because there is a sort of Florentine botanical character. Not only because there were some important botanists in the past, like Odoardo Beccari, who was the man who discovered the Amorphophallus, which is one of the biggest flowers of the world, but even because they were collecting, the citrus tree, the jasmines, and all the Medicean collection of plants. In Manifattura, there will be a lot of workers, creative workers, living and working there with their own shop. And so the idea is to create a garden that can take the size from the frequentation. So if there is someone that has a green thumb and want to practice, he can grow a list of plants, but freely, with no limit. And then I have promoted a lot of different plants that can move literally on the draining surface and create a garden like in Giverny, where Monet were walking on the Tropaeolum path, and something like that. And there are many different activities, not only the hanging garden. There are the Polimoda, which is the university for fashion, and then there is an hotel and a student hotel and some offices and some workers of fashion. There is a very good company for hats and some others for artists and everything. So it's very interesting, even for Florence. It was very innovative, and I was very happy to having the chance of doing this design there. And this hanging garden is working from 8 to 30 centimeters of soil. But we had the chance to work with these new technologies. So we have a range of plants that run from camphor trees to Mediterranean euphorbias, or small tiny covering plants on the head roof, just for the climate compensation, let's say. And then in the courtyards there will be a lot of self-seeding plants again. So from achilleas to verbenas to other grasses and even water plants, etc. And this is one of the courtyards called the Cortiere della Seminary Courtyard, Cortiere della Ciminiera. Then in the last years, we won this competition for the new Fendi factory. And I was very proud of myself, because I was designing with people that I have considered masters in my field. And we won. And we won with this idea of telling to the architects to put the buildings under the soil to compensate the hill that was excavated through the years for the cotto production, the cotto factory, because originally it was a place where they collect the clay for building the terracotta, the tiles for the paving, and even for the pots. And again, after years, it was abandoned. And you know, with the clay soils, the problem is the water, which is too much or not sufficient for growing anything. So during the works, we have seeded some plants that have created humus, and then they have create permeability to the soil for the water, and the soil have changed. And then we have these have designed these big hanging gardens, more than 15,000 square meters, and with a sort of topography as well, where again the wild plants can complete the list of the plants that we have introduced with our projects. And then it's open to all the wild animals that are a lot and are a part of the park there again. This was before how we found at the beginning, and then this is just at the planting, after the planting phase. And this is again what we thought and what it is now. I'm very happy because it's a creative lab as well. Fendi brought the production of the leather artisans there, because it's full of good schools and good artisans for special leathers, and that's good. And there's a list of small patios inside, characterized by plants that love or hate the water. And there's a courtyard, a patio called the Equisetium patio, and then it's a Petazitis patio, a moss patio, a mint patio, and a water irises patio, and so on. And that was very skillful. We are now working on the SNAM headquarters in Milano, in the area just beyond the Prada Foundation, which is a very interesting area for Milano. When I was a child, that part of Milano was really considered nothing. It was just a production site. And now Milano has been changed very much in the last 15 years. and with the Prada Foundation, the Art Prada Foundation, has very put a lot of energy and skill to that part, where we are doing a garden that is managing the water that in that part of the land, of the territory, is very high. For example, in Milano now is raining very hard, and it's all full of water now. And we want that, and we want to have these prairie that are partially wet, and we want to grow trees that can be left growing by themselves, and I have been doing a maintenance list of activities, and they are very strongly reduced, because I really would like to create something innovative for my city, where the people can grow the ability of a garden to be a garden with less maintenance, maybe by itself, just with nice plants. On the 8th floor, we have this indoor green area where it was quite difficult at the beginning to understand which kind of plants we can grow inside on a big tall ceiling, sorry, with not so much soil. So we have worked with Sicilian nurseries to find out which kind of epiphytic plants we can grow, and some climbers that can survive with air conditioning inside. And I am very keen to plant them in the next month. I'm very curious to see that. And at the last floor, there is even a big terrace with something which is not a terrace. It is really a garden, where it is unexpected to see the hills, the mountains there seems to be very close to Milano, because Milano it is in a sort of amphitheater of Alps, where you can see from the almost from the beginning of the Dolomites to the last Ligurian Alps, and in the middle there is this beautiful Monte Rosa, which is 4,800 meters tall. And there are some exclusive part of the garden where it is supposed to be a sort of an outdoor office for the workers. Snam is energy providing industry, and they are turning to hydrogen and other alternative sources. In Milano, I have been designing as well this small garden, and telling the truth, is very hard to design public spaces in Italy, because there is a lot of problems, not only in terms of maintenance, but even in terms of use of the spaces. Mediterraneans have a different concept in using public spaces, and especially Italians do not consider that public spaces are owned by everyone. We consider that is someone's own, and so we keep on, being unable to preserve plants, for example, or having a good approach to the spaces and etc. But I was very proud to doing this project, because it was on an area that in my childhood was an abusive parking, and it was an abusive parking since the Second World War II. So it was very curious, because in the middle of Milano, in the center, in downtown, very close to the Duomo, very close to the Borsa, there was this parking on a plot where under there was this Villa Imperiale, which is an imperial villa inside Milano. Designing this garden, we have been working with the archaeological offices to choose plants and to find ways not to put plants that can compromise the rest of the villa under. And the idea was to create an homage to the prairies of the Lombardia, which is not only in a flat as Milano is, but is a very interesting area for the Alps and etc. So with very interesting flowers, flowering buttercups and other plants. And an homage to the Lombardia classical gardens with all these ragnaias or other walls made of shrubs like the carpinus or other plants. And this is a garden very well loved by Milanese people, even because it's a very quiet spot in downtown, and I'm very happy. And it's very close to my office as well, so I'm very happy to having the chance to use this place that I have designed. Okay, this is the different layers of the project and etc. Vai pure avanti, Dalia. Okay. And then we work even with private private committees for private gardens. One on the others is this big garden I designed in Bologna for a client for whom I have been designing for more than 20 years, many different properties. And I designed this garden all with this idea of rooms, different kind of rooms with different collection of plants. And the interesting thing is that there was nothing there. Well, there was only the house, nothing. And so we start doing this garden, and the works have been done in 8 years. And I fall in love with this idea of doing collection of plants. And it was funny because at a certain time I decided to do this collection of Mediterranean plants because I started with my garden. So I said, Paolo, why don't we extend this idea to your garden? And he said, yes, I'm very proud to do that. And we start planting. And at a certain time, he was very frustrated because I planted that big 10 centimeters tall plants instead of planting big trees. And so he said, but I won't be able to see any big tree. And instead, at the end, the small trees grow much faster than the big ones we have planted. Again, the idea was to create a low maintenance garden, so with a lot of prairie and a lot of big masses of perennials that just can have a couple of work through the year, not more. And a lot of hedges, because it's a hilly garden with a lot of wind. And so the hedges could protect very well from the cold winds and from the heat of the summer. And now it's an open public garden, and it's a part of the Grandi Giardini Italiani. And it's one of the few, let's say, modern, we consider modern times garden of the list of the more than 100 gardens of the Grandi Giardini Italiani. But is visitable and it's well loved and well maintained. I'm very happy about that.
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat programme. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.
And again, these are parts of the garden, the kitchen garden. And this is another private garden in Valluretta, which is very close to Milano, which is actually in close to Piacenza, which is another town in another city in Italy. And that was very funny because the owner is a Milanese manager, a woman, living alone. So I was very worried at the beginning for designing a garden for a manager with no time and just the need of, deep inside the plants and the nature, but with any, let's say, garden skills at all. And so again, I have exported this idea from my garden to create big masses of meadows and a few lawns, maybe just maintained by robots or gravel around the houses where the plants can move by themselves. And so these houses, designed by a Dutch architect, was very good for matching with all these anarchic plants all around. And for anarchic plants, I say alchairs or maybe knautias or bulbs, many different kinds of bulbs, and sages or grasses, and they are able to move freely, and that's good. It is a concrete garden, actually, wild meadow and concrete and gravel garden. And the gardener, it is really the steps of the owner, nothing special. But I'm very happy. It works and it looks nice through the years, and that's good for me. Okay, and this is a garden we designed in Swiss a few years ago. And in Swiss, it's very different from Italy because everything is so precise. For precise, I mean that the neighbor knows the centimeters of the lawn of the property on which you are working. And to manage the project, you need to pass through the neighbors as well, not only from the public administrations. And if the neighbor don't like something, you cannot plant or you cannot do that design. But I was very happy. It works. And again, in these small centimeters, because actually it's a garden that it's less than 3,000 square meters, we are able to put a nice and comfortable swimming pool and a lot of big masses of plants. We had the chance to work with a very good nursery for magnolias, where we put some of the best magnolias I've ever planted in the garden. And then we worked for camellias with a very good nursery, an Italian nursery, who provide us some beautiful sasanquas and other winter flowering camellias and azaleas. So especially scented. So it was quite a pleasure to do that garden. And it's a beautiful spot, very well loved by the owners. And it's up on the hill facing to the lake. And again, there is these concrete slabs where the plants can move from the foot of the house to the foot of the wall of the house through the lawns and then to the slopes at the limit of the property, in few meters. And then my skill was to give this sense of floating paths. And I was very much in love during my studies for Carlo Scarpa and his ability of working with what we call in Italy lo scuretto, which means the light that passed through the borders, the limit of the shape of the materials. And we have been working with this Italian company of concrete, which is very, very interesting for me. And it's very much interesting, much more interesting than using stones or other things, even if, being a landscape architect, I much prefer planting than using concrete. Okay. And then for some years, I have been working for foreign clients on the seaside in Castiglione della Pescaia, the place where I told you about the rosemaries. And there was even a beautiful Daphne on the seaside. I was amazed to see this Daphne with a rosemary on the sand dunes I never expected to see it. And it was under a canopy, a dense canopy of pine forest. And it was very difficult at the beginning with not that much of water. Puoi andare avanti pure veloce, Dalida. This is the swimming pool. Everything is very small and very dense and very should give the idea of freshness and shade, because it's very, the sun in Italy could be very strong. And so from the design of the gate to the shade of the trees, everything was, I think, to be an homage of the pleasure of staying under the canopy. The same thing I've done in Maremma, in Capalbio, where the summer is very hot and dry, and the soil is very poor. But we had the pleasure to work for a client who is a horse breeder, Arabian horses, and we designed a garden with no irrigation system, and some part of the garden were even shaped by the horses. And it was working, and very slowly, with different different speed from all the other places I've been working to, but with a lot of success in shaping wild plants like Teucrium or Pistacia or many others. Then I've designed this permanent show garden in Radicepura. After that, I had the honor of becoming the artistic director. Radicepura is a park collecting a botanical park, so a botanical collection and a selection of gardens made by many different designers. Andy Sturgeon designed the garden actually, and Sarah Eberle will be soon design another garden. And Paolo Peirone made a beautiful garden last summer, and I designed this garden that was a sort of homage to the Sicilian water system. So it is the Arabian system of running the water through the land. And then I made a collection of tropical trees, tropical fruit trees, because in Sicily now we are able to grow from mangoes to lychee, which was really impossible to imagine a few years ago. Then I am designing this landscape project in Jaipur, in India, where it's always a big pleasure for me to come back, because I start traveling in India when I was very young, and I keep on traveling every year, even twice a year with my kids. And so for us, all India is a part of our, let's say, pleasure. And in Jaipur, there is this idea of learia, which is the waves of the wind and the sand dunes, and even the color of the turbans and etc. is characterized by these colors. And so we have been working for the first year in creating a nursery of wild plants for growing plants that we were unable to find in the normal nurseries. And now we have done the nursery, and we start planting now. The inspiration was, again, the waves and etc. The rooftop and the inner parts. In Vienna, I have taught for 2 years garden design and landscape architecture. The Angewandte Kunst University is a very interesting university for art and architecture, and have a small part for landscape architect, and I was happy to run this course for 2 years. And I had the chance to design with the students this part of the botanical garden in Belvedere. And I decided to work on this pool that was broken during the Second War. So it was a pool for water plants, but unable to keep the water inside. And so we decided to do, I say we, because I have worked for all the course with my students, and we have built this garden. There was no budget, and we had the chance to use materials and plants reproduced from the botanical garden. And the garden is still there. It was thought to stay just a couple of years, and now it's a permanent part of the botanical garden, and I'm very happy, even because the Viennese people can step inside, which is unpermitted in the rest of the botanical garden. Okay. And the last project, just to show you the activity we are working for 3 years, I've been working with the high-speed train line on a different scale, a territorial scale, for trying to understand the ecological approach of the project in the Susa Valley with the new high-speed train line from France to Italy. And there I have discovered a lot of different point of view and a different kind of plants that can grow together in a valley, a small valley, just because one side is sunny and the other is shady. And through the years, we have been introducing even this approach of wild plants on the building sites. And that was great, even for the animals and for the perception of the works. There was this beautiful Stipa pennata, which is an endemic variety there in Val di Susa. It was very, very interesting. So just few minutes, I want to introduce you the Radicepura Garden Festival. I have been the artistic director for this Biennale for the second edition. And I have introduced the idea of this edition, which will be chaos. And chaos, for me, it is very fundamental, being a Mediterranean garden festival, because all over the world, chaos is a bad word. It is something that it is quite on the opposite side of the garden. Instead, for us, Mediterranean chaos, it's really an inspiration. It's not an inspiration because it's a way of life, but because it's something that can complete the design. Because in Italy, as a matter of fact, we don't have gardeners. We have beautiful nurseries, but we have a different concept in the use of the space, the idea of the garden, even the prejudice of doing a garden and owning a garden. And so this is one aspect. The other aspect is that we are under the volcano Etna, which is an active volcano, the most active volcano in Italy, where the soil is very fertile because of the activity of the volcano, and it's full of water. So it's a mild climate, rich soil, and full of water, Mediterranean spot. It's a paradise for gardeners. And the festival will be open to young designers. It is funny, but for Italians, 36 years old is being young. And we will be giving the prize to 7 gardens to build a spot in the festival that will last for a couple of years, not only next year, but even the year after. And there is a budget, of course, for the garden creation, which is 5,000 euros. And there is the aid of this very big and rich nursery called Piante Faro, close to it, where we can really count on many different species and many different sizes of plants. And I hope that some of the listeners can join this festival, because it is been very successful, the last edition. We have received more than 1,000 projects, and selecting 7 is very hard, but I'm very happy, and I'm very happy that in Italy we have the chance of speaking of the good side of the chaotic Mediterranean gardens. Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you. That was amazing. I mean, a terrific voyage through an enormous number of projects. And the obvious question to me is always, how are you always able to find the plants you want to use? I mean, this is so often the limiting factor with projects, is actually finding sufficient quantities of particular plants that are perhaps not so common in the trade.
In fact, this is a major problematic, especially because when, as you know, when you're supposed to work in a Mediterranean climate garden, is not only problematic to find the numbers of plants, but even the genetical form of that plant that is good for being planted in that soil. For example, in Italy, we have few nursery that produce wild plants, because most of them, or let's say a number of them, has the species, have the variety, but from other countries. And so they are completely different from the one that grows in the wild. I am very happy because in Italy we have a big number of garden enthusiasts, especially with nurseries, in the nurseries, and collectors are mostly private collectors. And there is a net of exchanging of seeds and plants and cuttings from privates to the nursery, from the nursery to the privates, and etc. And abroad has been sometimes a problem. As I told you, in India was impossible, for example, to find some caparis that were growing everywhere, or tecomas that were growing everywhere in the desert. And it was quite a shame, because there's any problem in growing them. In Italy, we have problems mostly with some wild forms of Mediterranean plants, let's say, for example, the Genista etnensis, which don't like to grow in a pot. And so there is small numbers of that plants, and mostly are confused with spartiums or other plants that are not absolutely the same. But we had the chance to work with some nurseries that can grow the plants from the seeds. So maybe we can collaborate with them and ask them to grow them and keep on producing for the next years, and etc. Unfortunately, it's more easy for garden designers to find big plants of a species, unexpected or difficult species, than a number of small sizes, which is quite frustrating. For example, in Sicily, there is only probably one nursery growing the variety of small plants for in different varieties, and it is a small nursery in Milazzo. All the others are growing big plants, big pieces, but you cannot do a garden with only big plants.
I loved what you were. I loved what you were saying about chaos, because to me, I always think that's the balance in gardening, is between like chaos and control, and finding that balance. And I think lots of us are really learning to let go a little bit. But it's amazing how beautiful it is. The work that you've done, it's amazing how artistic it looks, how it looks like a painting. You know, it's the way you've edited and let go is stunning.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy you say that, because it's sometimes doing these, the gardeners tell me very frequently, do the owners do that? We are doing that, because I didn't understood at the beginning, and probably he will not know. So, but it's I'm very happy. It's a part of being somehow a gardener by myself. I am always fascinated in more fascinated in species, wild species, than hybrids.
And getting that genetic diversity, which I think again is a real problem in so often in the trade. You have one cultivar, just very, very limited genetic diversity, whereas if you're trying to create something that's more self-sustaining, you need, it's good to have the diversity on so many different
For example, Noel, before we were talking about Portugal. In Portugal, I was really astonished in seeing all these Almiocistus and Scabiosa and Knautias on the sand dunes after the fire have opened the forest.
Yes.
And the forest was made by something very exotic for the year, probably eucalyptus and few more other trees. And he said these Almiocistus and others are so beautiful, and that kind of plants are impossible to find in the nurseries, and that's a pity. That's really a pity.
Well, we do have a very good nursery in Portugal, Sigmetum. I'm sure you know them, who are working with wild seed provenance plants, and they really are, you know, a gold standard in terms of using native flora. Are there any, so in terms of your own gardening, your own experimental gardening, are there particular species that you feel you've really discovered through your own gardening that you're now able to use much more extensively, or could be used much more extensively in particularly in public landscapes?
I was very impressed about the familiarity of plants, some plants from a certain altitude of the Yunnan areas that are perfect to my climate and soil in Tuscany.
Wow.
Few are very common. For example, Lijiang rose, that was very, let's say, one of the Chinese roses, is turning a perfect companion for Mediterranean gardens because
Really?
it's growing very fast. It's freely blooming. And for example, last year it blooms twice because it was a very different season. And it's very resistant to the heat. So I was very impressed. And then what were called the Michelias as well are perfect. And some oriental plants are very, very interesting for this climate change, I would say. And some others are very frustrating. For example, I've been cultivating Ceanothus through the years, and when I think I'm very happy with them, at the end they die. And so I asked a garden designer, a friend in California, and said, but they do that. They do that even in our region.
Really?
And so
it's so good that you I mean, do you get much time to garden now? Are you still gardening at home?
Yeah. This morning, actually, I was in Tuscany because yesterday I went searching plants in Pistoia, and so I slept there, and then I drove this morning to Milano. And this morning I was doing some gardening, and I was cleaning my dry garden beyond the studio, and there now it's very beautiful because it's the Cistus moment. And it's such a pleasure to see how long they are blooming. And they are blooming together with Carpenteria these days. And then they start blooming even with the opium poppies. And that was really, really, really beautiful. I was very happy about that. And
I think it's really important that landscapers are gardening, you know, landscape designers are gardening, because that's where you see how things work, isn't it? You really know when you design something, you know that plant and you know that work will work there. It's such an important
I think it is mandatory for a garden designer. I mean, if you are truly interested in what a garden can do and what plants can give to you, you must know even the character of some plants, the longevity of the plants, the capacity of resiliency of some plants. For example, this morning I was doing a long phone call in the garden in a corner where it was nice, but nothing special. When I went to the car for leaving, for coming in Milano, it was really so full of different scents that I cannot really describe it to you, because there were the scent of the roses, there were the scent of the Michelia figo, then there was the Calicanthus floridianus in fully bloom. So there are many different scents, all mixed together with the Cistus leaves scents, and it was perfect. And how can you do that if you don't know, know that, for example, scents are not through the day, but maybe in some parts of the day. And in Italy, it's very common to be seduced by plants in certain seasons, but not all the season. Some are very noisy, are very unpleasant, are very tough, no? Too hot, maybe. Or, for example, every time I go to La Foce, I am surprised because it is a sort of spa for pleasure, because it's windy, it's cool, it's shady, and it's protected. But if you don't know that, and you are just driving through the Val d'Orcia, you feel Val d'Orcia very unpleasant, beautiful, but very tough, no?
Yes.
So I believe that is very, very important to do that. I was very happy because I've studied architecture, because in Italy it's difficult to be trained as a garden design. It was when I was studying, and then after that I spent some time in Kew Garden School design course, and I stayed longer practicing with John Brooks, and there was very, very beautiful, not only for the quality of the studies and the sharing of the same opinions, the same enthusiasm on the garden, but even for leaving the Kew Gardens in any moment of the day, early morning, late in the afternoon. And was such a pleasure that every time I go there, I know where I can find a scent, where I can find different plants. And I was there with my kids a couple of years ago, and they were surprised that I remember I have this olfactive, let's say, memoir of that place.
Yeah, right.
I believe it is very important.
Yeah, oh, fascinating. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. That was most interesting, and well, very much look forward to meeting you someday.
Yeah, you're always welcome in
yes,
Tuscany.
To see your garden would be most interesting. And actually, if you're next in Portugal, well, do give me a shout. I'd love you to show around what we're doing here.
I will. Don't say it twice, because I will.
No, please, yes.
Ditto if you're in Somerset.
Yes. Yes, great. And marvelous. Okay, well, thank you so much. And
thanks to you, really. Thank you.
It
was a great pleasure to join you. Thank you.
It's lovely to see those images, beautiful images. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat programme. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.